Hello everybody and welcome to Notorious Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm Notorious Cly and this is Dope or Cope, a new video series that I've been working on where I take a deck that has been getting a lot of hype in the Yugioh TCG and give you my thoughts and tell you why I think it's either dope or cope. If it's dope, I expect it to live up to the hype and be able to compete in the current meta. I expect everything that people are saying about it to be true. If it's cope, I expect the exact opposite. I expect the hype to be exactly that, just hype, all bark, no bite, empty promises. For those of you who know me, you know I'm a straight shooter. If something is good, I will tell you it's good. If it isn't, I'm going to tell you it isn't. And today, you are going to get my 100% honest and authentic take on none other than dinos.
You see, a few years back on a routine dig for dinosaur fossils...
Dino is a deck that's been getting a little bit of a hype lately and being talked about in the Yu-Gi-Oh community because True King Lithosagem, the Destruction, was recently brought from Limited 1 to the ban list to Unlimited, meaning you can now play it at 3 copies. Litho, as I'm going to refer to it for the rest of the video, because Lithosagem is way too much of a mouthful for me to be saying 20 or 40 times. Litho is an incredibly powerful monster. It has an effect that you can destroy 2 monsters from face up on your side of the field or in your hand, including at least 1 earth monster, to special summon itself. And if both monsters you destroyed were earth monsters, you can then look at your opponent's extra deck and banish up to 3 cards from their extra deck with different names. That is an incredibly powerful effect and can sometimes be outright game winning on its own. The effect gets even more crazy in the context of dinos because you have monsters that want to be destroyed. Your engine revolves around destroying babies, as funny as that is to say. Dinos is a beloved deck and pretty popular, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, so I'm going to skip over a lot of the little stuff and just stick to the main topic, which is if I think it's dope or cope. Is it going to be good, or is it going to be bad in this upcoming format? While we're still on the topic of ban lists, another reason why Dinos has been getting a little bit of hype lately is because tier limit is not going to be dominating the format, and thus graveyard hate is going to be less omnipresent. In addition to the tier limit cards kind of rotating their way out of the limelight, they still may be good, but they may not be the best deck. The Ishizu cards are also all limited to 1, so they are not a must play for everybody hoping to compete in the upcoming format. Dinos is a deck that desperately needs its graveyard to do anything substantial. There are some ways you can play without your graveyard, but nothing meaningful is going to come out of it. The most you'll be able to do is make an alternate conductor Tyranno and pass. So tier limits being out of the meta, or at least out of the undisputed must prepare for this deck at all costs meta, is a good thing for dinos. It means you won't have to worry about Dimensional Shifter, Ghost Bell, Silent Graveyards, Different Dimensional Ground, Dimensional Fisher, and all the other cards that we have come to hate over the last few months. One last reason why Dinos has made its way back into the conversation is because it, on the surface, seems to have some good tools when competing against Kashtira, the projected #1 deck for the upcoming format. Kashtira is notably weak to having their monsters flip face down. A lot of people are taking Book of Eclipse into their deck for that specific reason. And Dinos has a Book of Eclipse type monster with 3,500 attack, and it can attack all monsters your opponent controls. Ultimate Conductor Tyranno is being hyped up a bit as a silver bullet to the Kashtira strategy. And rightfully so. Ultimate Conductor Tyranno is one of the best boss monsters in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And quite possibly the best main deck boss monster in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Branded is another deck that's also expected to be at the top of the format. And historically, Dinos had a not bad matchup against Branded. Branded typically didn't run enough hand traps to account for stopping decks like Dinos, and you could combo off and put enough interaction on board to cripple your opponent. Before we can give Dino its dope or cope tag, we should explore its strengths and weaknesses, so we are able to make an informed decision. First and foremost, its #1 strength is Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but this is one of the most devastating boss monsters in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! It is the ultimate aggro tool, capable of flipping all your opponent's monsters face down, rendering their effects useless, and then attacking each one of them. In addition to that, you can also, when you're attacking a defense position monster, elect to send it to the graveyard and inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. This means if ever there was something with more defense than Ultimate Conductor Tyranno can handle, you can just send it to the graveyard and start burning your opponent. Ultimate Conductor Tyranno's effect is not limited to just your turn though. It is a quick effect during the main phase, meaning while your opponent is trying to set up their board to out your Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, you can stop them dead in their tracks if flipping their monsters face down would do that. I'm going to continue gushing about Ultimate Conductor Tyranno for just a little bit longer because it is one of my favorite cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Ultimate Conductor Tyranno is easily searchable in this deck. It is notably searchable by Soul-Eating Oviraptor. You are most often not going to search Ultimate Conductor Tyranno with Oviraptor, but the option is always there. In addition to being relatively easy to search and find, it is easy to summon via Double Evolution Pill by banishing one dinosaur monster and one non-dinosaur monster from your hand or graveyard, or by its own effect. You can banish 2 dinosaur monsters from your graveyard to special summon Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. This monster is incredibly easy to find and incredibly easy to get out on the field, which makes its effects even crazier. Consistency and accessibility are 2 of the strongest things in Yu-Gi-Oh! And when things are going well, this deck has it with Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, the ultimate boss monster. In addition to being able to find and summon Ultimate Conductor Tyranno almost at will, this deck is an impressive combo deck. You are never really locked into any one specific summoning mechanic or any one specific type, meaning your extra deck is full of possibilities. This is commonly populated with a wide variety of rank 4 Xyz toolbox monsters and easily summonable and accessible toolbox link monsters. And you can even synchro summon if you're going to be playing the Scrap engine, which I highly recommend. It is one of my favorite engines to play. Scrap Raptor is an incredible card, and so is Scrap Wyvern. Those 2 add so much versatility and so much utility to the toolbox that it's hard for me to pass up. It's not uncommon for Dino's turn 1, if left uninterrupted, to feature Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, and a rank 4 Xyz, being Dolka, which is monster negation, Lagia, which is spell trap negation or summon negate, something like IP Masquerena to get into one of your toolbox monsters on your opponent's turn, Appaloosa to add even more monster negation to the board, or to pair up with Lagia so you are well-rounded and covered on all bases, and Borreload Savage Dragon, which is just an Omni negate. One last strength I'd like to bring up about this deck is Miscellaneous Eris. This card is so incredibly powerful and so insane that it spawned a meme. Misk, have you read it? For those of you who've chosen to embrace the meme and never read Misk, I'll break it down for you, because there may be some people new to Yu-Gi-Oh! Watching this video as well. Misk at quick effect speed can send itself from the hand to the graveyard to protect your dinosaur monsters from all your opponent's activated effects for this main phase. This is incredibly powerful because it shuts off your opponent's ability to interact with your dinosaur monsters while you're building your board. And in addition to that, it shuts down your opponent's ability to interact with your dinosaur monsters while you are attempting to break their board or they are attempting to break yours. Miscellaneous Eris is such a crazy card and so very important for the dinosaur strategy that it can't be talked about enough. The last strength that I'd like to bring up about this deck has nothing to do with gameplay. It has to do with the real world. This deck is incredibly budget friendly to build. It is something that can be built cheaply, and you can replace the expensive staples and extra deck toolbox monsters with cheaper alternatives, and then add to it over time if you enjoy the deck. This deck, in my opinion, is a great entry point for anybody looking to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, both new and returning players. I should know, this was the first deck that I built when I decided to return to the TCG. I think it's also worth mentioning at this point in time that another reason why Dinos has been getting talked about, and another one of its potential strengths, is that there is upcoming support that seems to fit perfectly with the Dino strategy. In the OCG, they have announced a new archetype called Transcendric, which is essentially dinosaur support. I'm unsure at this current time if there's more cards still to be released for the archetype, but right now there seems to be a couple cool tools for the deck that really open up its capabilities and give you some new routes of play. That's something this deck desperately needs, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. Now let's talk about the deck or strategy's weaknesses. Number 1 in my book is consistency. All of your main Dino combos revolve having 2 cards and oftentimes 2 specific cards paired together in your hand. Whether it's Ovi and Baby, Ovian Misk, Miskin Baby, Ovian Lost World, or Scrap Raptor in Lost World. Or technically Litho and Baby Ceratosaurus plus another Earth monster. Technically not a 2-card combo, but 2.5 is close enough, I guess. Yes, you do have decent searchability in this card via Soul Eating Oviraptor or Fossil Dig, but you're always going to require 2 specific cards, and you're not always guaranteed to see Oviraptor or Fossil Dig. Sometimes you will just open unplayable. The number 2 weakness of this deck, in my opinion, is its vulnerability to interruption or interaction from your opponent. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes you will have to search the key combo piece you are missing, and if your opponent gets a read on that, a well-timed Ash, Veiler, Imperm, Ghostbell, DD Crow, or even Ghost Ogre can sometimes shut your entire turn down. The best way for this deck to play through those interruptions is with Miscellaneous Eris. Miscellaneous Eris is limited to 1, so you are not guaranteed to see it in your opening hand. You can search it with Fossil Dig, or you can search it with Oviraptor, as previously mentioned, but if your opponent is willing to take the chance that you don't already have Misk, not finding it could be the end of your turn. There's also another thing to consider, that Misk only protects dinos that are face up on your side of the field from your opponent's activated effects, meaning your graveyard is fair game. Dinos is a deck that requires having cards in the graveyard and specific cards in the graveyard to work. A well-timed DD Crow, Skullmeister, or even Dimensional Shifter, sometimes even Artifact Lancia, can shut your turn down. Going hand in hand with this deck's vulnerability to interaction or disruption is its lack of extenders. Your extenders aren't your traditional extenders where you'll be able to special summon them to your side of the field via their own effect. They are all cards that need other cards to help them extend. The number 3 weakness of this deck is its vulnerability to board breakers. Dark Ruler No More and Forbidden Droplet are really hard for this deck to deal with. They do not have an in-engine out or a way to play through them or play around them. There is another engine that you can play with the deck that you're not seeing on screen right now, which is the Doodle engine, but in my opinion, that just doesn't do enough to warrant replacing other key techs or format staples. Another one of the weaknesses for Dinos, specifically in this format, is its ability to catch strays. Your opponent is going to be preparing for decks like Kashtira, Branded, Sprite, Sword Soul, and probably a few others. There are going to be cards that your opponent has in their side deck, prepared for other strategies, that are also going to work well against you. Artifact Lancia is a tech that has been talked about as something that has potential to help win the Kashtira matchup, and that doesn't pair up well against Dinos. Oftentimes, you're going to need to be able to banish cards from your graveyard, like Miscellaneous Eris, to keep your engine rolling. In addition to Double Evolution Pill needing to banish cards so you can get to your boss monster with ease. Dark Ruler No More and Forbidden Droplets are not always format staples, but they are always staples that people will have prepared, and this deck struggles against them. As mentioned earlier, you're not going to have any searchable or accessible back row that you can rely on to win and counter that side deck matchup. Kaijus and Super Kaijus like Lava Golem and Sphere Mode are also going to be played this format. Those cards allow your opponent to take the key pieces of interaction off your board that would prevent them from being able to play. Dimensional Shifter is also a card that probably won't be in people's sideboards, but it has been seen in Kashtira's main board, which is something that also shuts this deck down. If this deck is being touted as a strategy that can go toe-to-toe with Kashtira, you're not going to want to see them have the Silver Bullet Dimensional Shifter in their main deck in their opening hand. I feel like we have adequately gone over the strategy's strengths and weaknesses, so it's time to assign it its tag. Is Dinos going to be dope or cope this format? In my humble opinion, Dinos this format is going to be cope. This pains my heart to have to say because I love Dino so much. It's an incredibly fun strategy to play, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart. Like I mentioned, it was the first deck I put together when re-entering the TCG. I even love the deck so much that I got these. Hold on. That's upside down. Now that I've gotten my hot take out of the way, and some of you are probably really mad at me, let's just talk with a little more nuance and a little more context. I don't think Dinos is going to be awful this format. I just don't think that it's going to live up to hype, and I don't think it has a good enough matchup against all of the meta to be considered a viable rogue option at the highest levels of play. For regional and YCS, I think you can take this deck and win more games than you lose with it. I wouldn't expect to top a regional or YCS playing Dinos, but I wouldn't expect to lose all of my games either. At the local level, depending on your locals, I think Dinos is an incredibly viable option. I know that's where most of us end up playing, and if I had to break this down into more nuanced categories, Dinos at the local level is dope. This is a deck that I would definitely feel comfortable taking, and I definitely think can win more games than it would lose. And depending how casual your locals is, it may even be able to take the whole thing. Dinos does enough good things and has enough good things going for it that I think it is very playable this format. I just do not think it is going to be one of the decks of the format. All of the graveyard hate, tier limit cards, the Shizu cards, and Dimensional Shifter being out of everybody's main board is only going to help the deck become playable again, but playable does not fix any of the deck's pre-existing issues. If this deck can just get a little more consistent, find more ways to extend, or find alternate lines of play that don't lock you out of your main strategy, I think Dinos can be a force to be reckoned with. This strategy, this deck has some of the most broken cards I've ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! Soul Eating Oviraptor searches any dinosaur. Miscellaneous Eris has a meme about it because it's that crazy. Pankratops is very, very good in this deck because it's searchable. Ultimate Conductor Tyranno is one of the best monsters in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Baby Ceratosaurus and PT Pteranodon don't really have once per turn. That's something that's been changing a lot in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! The deck has a lot of really good pieces, and it's really cool and it's really fun to play, but ultimately I just can't see it taking on the meta and being highly successful with all of its existing flaws. Here's to hoping that the Transcendric archetype can fix that. I know I'm incredibly excited for all of the new support, and I can't wait to see what it does for the strategy. Alright everybody, and I think it's time we close out this video. I hope you liked Dope or Cope. If you have a deck or a strategy you want me to do one of these videos on, let me know. In addition to that, if you're interested in seeing a Dino deck profile, or even me playing the deck, let me know down in the comments. This is a deck I love playing, and I would not be upset to have to spend time working on a video for it. That's all I got for you for today. As always, be safe, have fun, everybody.